Welcome back to the Rowdy Boy Podcast with your host, Titus Thind. Once again, we got special guest host Dillan Bousquet in, and this is going to be our final installment for the fall semester. Today, we're going to be focusing on the Enterprise Report about Reinhardt University and the athletic programs.
This is going to be a tough conversation.
Yeah, a little tough conversation, but it is what it is. So, Reinhardt University really values all their sports programs. We don't want that to be misunderstood, but
very much so.
But some are not held in the same regard as others, and sometimes it doesn't really add up or make sense. Our main topic here today is how the football team receives a lot of funding for a lot of things, and other programs really don't. They have to do some things on their own. They don't get proper busing. They don't get their equipment paid for, stuff like that. I'm a part of the men's lacrosse team, and that is the focus right now. And our budget for a whole team for an entire year is $29,000, and one student brings in at least anywhere between $20,000 to $41,000. So we don't really understand why we're at a lack of so many things. Our program's hated around the country by other programs. They don't really want to play us and stuff like that. So we have to travel a lot, and we don't even have money to go travel, so we're struggling to get games, and we're a top-tier program. For instance, we have to buy our own helmets and gloves, which are necessities, but other programs, they have their shoulder pads and their helmets, and they don't really have to worry about as much things as we do. We have to pay for. We have to fundraise. We have to pay for our own equipment. We have to basically give money in order to travel for spring break and stuff like that. And I just want to harp on that, Mr. Bousquet.
Yeah, no, I'm going to start off by saying I don't know the statistics and the number values. They're not sitting in front of me, so I can't just rattle them off the top of my head. But I definitely want to talk about, what you talked about in some points. With football and, baseball, they get a lot of their stuff paid for. And I get that they don't have – I get that their equipment's not as expensive as ours, but at the same time, it's they get their equipment. Let's focus on baseball. They get their equipment, like their gloves, their cleats. They get shoes. They get batting helmets. They get bats. They get actual batting gloves. They get their uniforms. Most of that stuff they're not paying for. Yes, the student can bring in their own glove and all that stuff on their own. But men's lacrosse, best example is even let's say new programs like Weber. Weber University, all their players get their equipment paid for. They get sticks. They get mesh for their sticks for replacements, and they get 2 sticks a year. So they get a shaft and a head, a shaft and a head, and then mesh to go with that stuff. We do not get any of that. We have to provide everything our own. Everything that we have, the only thing that Reinhardt gives us is a place to store our equipment, a field to play on, and uniforms. And rings if we win a national championship.
Yeah, with that being said, conference championships are usually a big deal. The football team gets theirs, and I know that the football team, theirs are paid for. But, for instance, our women's lacrosse team just won their second consecutive championship, and they had to pay out of pocket for their own ring.
Well, football is the only conference champions that get their rings paid for.
Yeah,
everybody else has to pay for it.
And, it doesn't make sense how a women's lacrosse team who did something that's, not really accustomed to them, they don't get that rewarded. They basically have to pay for their own rewards and other things, how you mentioned baseball. They have their own batting facilities and stuff they can go.
They have 2 batting facilities, one indoor, along with their own locker room.
We get a grass field to go shoot on with nets.
And we have to move our nets off the field. We can't keep them on the field.
And you can't really go do that if you're by yourself very easily. And
those nets are so heavy.
And the nets don't even have proper netting. There's holes and stuff. So if you're trying to work out, at least they could put a backstop for us.
Yeah, and we're shooting against a brick building where there are windows and there's pipes and all kinds of stuff behind the net. We have lacrosse shooting. A lacrosse ball can fly at 100 miles an hour plus, and we have no backstop to protect other students. So when we're shooting, God forbid, let's say we're on the left side of the net, and if you know where our net sits, you understand what I'm talking about. But basically, like, if we're on the left side of the net and we shoot and it goes over the net or it goes through a hole, it's basically right at a doorway. There have been many times where we've shot and people have walked out of the doorway and that ball is flying at them at 90 miles an hour plus, and we have to scream heads up.
Yeah, and not only that, there's like teams that practice behind there and they're oblivious, and like that takes away from us. And the lacrosse team was a little bit of a focus because they're 4-time defending national champions, and sometimes it doesn't feel like they get the respect that they deserve. Like even last year with the COVID, football and lacrosse practice, like both in the spring, and we always got gypped on hours. It was always football, 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 and we had an undefeated team. Like there's not like stuff for us to get better sometimes on campus. Like the main thing with lacrosse is like being able to pass and catch. Like all you need is a wall, but then they don't want you to throw the ball against the wall anywhere on campus. Like the least they could do is just put up a little 10 by 10 concrete wall somewhere so athletes can go focus on their skills.
Yeah, give them the best way to succeed, and that's by giving them the proper things to succeed. I mean, there are so many high schools down here in Georgia alone that have a 10 by 10 brick wall. Like, they're everywhere.
How the school always says football brings in the most money, football does this, which is actually an incorrect statement. Currently, women's lacrosse brings in the most money, only by like $600, but it's not like the football team's bringing in a major amount. Their total net profit after their expenses last year was only around $2,800. And the school doesn't really even make a whole bunch of money off athletics as like they want. So I understand like some of the reasons, but there's no reason a program or an entire school with 23 teams, adding 24 come this spring with flag football, should only be making like $20,000. Our program is smaller, but our coach has less money to deal with like for recruiting and scholarships compared to like a football team. Like almost there's like 100 kids almost out there, and like 70% of them are on scholarships on the average around $8,000 at least. So,
well, you would think that, especially being with as successful as the men's lacrosse team is, that the school would really want them to succeed more and continue with that success. Every year, I mean, again, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I can't look back at my freshman year to now. But I just feel like our budget has not increased. And, I mean, it's kind of messed up to say, but when you win, I feel like you deserve a lot more. Like, we've won 4 national championships in 5 consecutive years. And the only reason why we didn't go 5 for 5 is because of COVID. I mean, we were undefeated in that COVID season when they canceled us. And then coming back to campus, our goal was to maintain the championship etiquette, which we did. And now we're sitting here still having to pay for gloves, helmets, sticks, elbow pads. And with lacrosse now, there's a new rule where we all have to buy new shoulder pads. And the shoulder pads cost about $150. Well, we're broke college students. Like, we can't afford $150 right out of pocket.
Plus, like, with all the hours we have to put into our sport, it doesn't really, like, make a lot of sense. And with that being said, like, the season got cut short. Like, they were still planning trips and stuff. Like, I don't know how there wasn't a little extra money laying around. Like,
yeah, I have no clue where that money from the 2020 budget went. Like, I have no clue where it went.
At all. Football, another thing, like, we haven't even got practice apparel this year because of, like, budgeting and stuff like that. And we're having to, like, pay for our own stuff. Like, do football players pay for pants, pennies? No. Like, we should have our pennies, our shorts, like, our shooters, like, everything that we need should have already been in place, because we're going into the spring and we're going into scrimmages, like, in the fall. And we don't even have guys with all the same apparel. We look like a goddamn high school team. Yeah,
and we look worse than that because at least, I mean, in my high school, we got things immediately. We got everything we needed immediately. Yes, it was owned by the school, but that's fine. That's what I don't get. Sorry for backing up from the mic, but basically, like, we have all these things, right? All these things that we need. Okay, I get elbow pads, and I get chest protector. I'll throw them a bone on that. Or maybe cleats. The chest protector we really need help from the school to even lock down all the chest protectors needed, because there will be kids on our team that will not have the chest protector in time for the season just because of, like, basically what's going on with the shipping crisis right now. But it's just kind of ridiculous to me that the school doesn't own the helmets, doesn't own, all the equipment that we need. So, like, our balls, our nets, our helmets, our jerseys, our pennies, our shorts, our shirts. You guys can own that stuff. It's fine. Have Reinhardt pay for all that. If we need to keep a list for it every day and make sure people are turning stuff in, we're cool with that. Like that, I'm fine with that. That stuff shouldn't leave the locker room anyway. Yeah. I get that, but at the same time, it's like
we're just asking for a little respect and a little change.
Well, what about this year? We get new helmets, right? We get new gloves, right? The only thing we get to keep this year, at the end of this year, are gloves. We don't even get to keep the helmets that we paid money for. We don't get to.
And we're doing that as well. Like we're making like videos, highlights. Like we're hyping up these things that we have invested into the program, and we're trying to make this place better, leave it better than how we came in, and we just can't do it. Like we can, but we can't do it with like some help. I just don't understand it. It just really doesn't add up. Not to mention the other programs that don't have things like golf doesn't have like a hitting facility. Like, but there's always stuff for the weight room. Like for football, like they always have priority. Like even us as a lacrosse team, we share trainers, and our trainer doesn't even come to practice because he has to deal with football things, and it just isn't like I feel like fair to us. Like especially with there being so many trainers on campus, like there should definitely be one while we're at practice and stuff like that too.
Well, I understand fairness, and I get the school, right? I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. Yes, I would absolutely love for lacrosse to get everything in the world and we not pay a dime. Yes, but that's a perfect situation and imperfect world. I get that. But at the same time, it's like going back to what I was speaking of, that championship mentality and that championship style. Like, we've done what we've had to do. We've won championships. The school brags about us. That's fantastic. If money is such a problem, which it always is, I get that we need money, then why are we not reaching out to programs in Cherokee selling Reinhardt stuff? Why are we not hyping kids up? Why are we not doing as much as we possibly can?
Even a sponsorship.
Like, why are we not looking to Moe's? Why are we not looking at McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, these massive things in Canton, AMC, screw it, who cares? If they can throw us like $150, like $150 for a student goes a hell of a long way.
And like their advertisement is already like all over the field. Like there's tons of like local businesses like with advertisements on the field, but why are they advertising if they don't even support us? Like at least they could do is like put like a picture up, like basically resembling us, like so people can like know about us more. And yeah, it's just a little frustrating of a situation, and I think there has to be like some sort of change.
I mean, I think change goes with, like, people putting, not a fire underneath someone's, behind, but I think the only way change is going to be able to evolve the way that it needs to is if kids are pressuring it. I get, again, like we've always said, the justification for this whole thing has always been, like, oh, it's because football brings more money, football has more kids, like, they're a bigger team, like, I get that. And I also get that wanting to win a national championship for football is, for most schools in the AI, a lot bigger than winning for lacrosse.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, I mean, we just lost to Kaiser. They got all that stuff and lost to Kaiser.
For the second consecutive year.
In the first round. You get all that and you lose to Kaiser. We get nothing and we make it to championships. I mean, throw us a bone. Yes, you guys pay for our rings at the end of the year. You guys put up a picture of us and you hang up our banner.
And that's what I was actually just going to say. Like,
we don't even have a picture from 2021.
Like, neither the signs when you come into Waleska haven't even been updated. It only shows that we won the past 3. Like, the least they could do is, like, edit the sign. Like, signs go down all the time in the parking lot and they're up the next day. Like, they still haven't changed that. And that's just, like, we just want to speak our mind a little bit and let this be known. Appreciate you, Mr. Bousquet, for all your work.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Been a joy to have on the podcast this semester, and hopefully we can continue to do some great things next semester and build our brand. But
yeah, hopefully, man.
Well, signing off once again for this installment. This was Titus Thind, your host, co-host Dillan Bousquet. Thank you for tuning into the Rowdy Boy. We'll see you guys next year, 2022. Let's make it a great one. Also follow RU Eagle Eye on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and make sure you follow the Reinhardt Lacrosse page on Instagram. That's Reinhardt U _Lags. Make sure you guys get at us.